100% sure how many people are joining us today. As always, it's a bit of a free-for-all. We've got, I'll introduce Loz and Sham in a bit. They're going to be taking us through today's session. I'm Rachel from the Active Nuts and Active Derbyshire team, and we've got Adam in the background helping us with the background stuff, the tech, should I say.
Rachel, I'm just going to start sharing my slides now, that's okay.
Okay,
just might as well have it on in the background. Just
go for it.
Avoid any technical difficulties.
Yeah, you get set up. Sounds good.
Can you see that okay?
Yeah.
Oh, perfect.
We're all set. A few people popping in. We'll just give it another 30 seconds or so. Welcome to everybody that's just joined. Just to let you know, I think everyone can see that, but we have just started to record the session, just so people are aware.
No problem.
Thanks, Adam. Okay, so we'll keep letting people come in as they do, but good afternoon, everybody. I'm Rachel from the Active Nuts and Active Derbyshire team. I work quite closely with Loz and Sham in Nottingham City around some of this This Girl Can work, but we've sort of titled the session a little bit more broadly today around work that's been happening in the city to enable women who are less likely to be moving to move more. And we are very kindly joined by Loz from Nottingham City Council and Sham, who will be taking us through today's session. We really welcome any questions, but if you can pop them into the chat as the guys are talking us through, and then we'll come back to questions towards the end of the session, and feel free to sort of come off mic and ask anything and pop things in the chat that way. That'd be brilliant. So yeah, I will pass over to you, Loz, if that's all right.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel. And this is probably where I'd say, Sham, give us a wave, but am I right in still thinking, Sham, we can't see Sham? Okay, I mean, a lot of people on this call probably do know who Sham is, but there is a video in a few minutes, don't worry, it's not just me and Sham talking for the whole time. So you will get to see Sham, but I think she's having technical difficulties. So yeah, my name's Loz. I work for the City Council, Nottingham City Council, as Partnerships and Projects Officer. I'll be kind of talking through a little bit more about kind of the project management and what we've done over the last few years, and Sham will be here to kind of give us a bit more of a personal experience, I suppose, and what it looks like over the next few years as well. So before we go into this, I was really conscious that when me and Rachel kind of spoke about this initially, I wanted to say, look, we're not sitting here and saying this is the correct way to do it. We're just one piece of a complex puzzle, and we've had freedom to explore it, and Sport England have given us that freedom as well. And we've not got everything right. I'll try and be as honest as I can with everything and talk through about what went wrong, but actually how we've kind of reflected on that and what we learned from it, I think, is probably the most important thing. And there's quite a few organisations that are present and people that are present in the room as I saw them kind of come in. And it really has taken, I think the expression's taken a village to do this work. And I'm really thankful for people helping with this, people that the voluntary sector, sporting organisations, engagement partners. There's been so many people that helped us. So the next 30 minutes, the plan is that we're going to cover a little bit of the background of This Girl Can. I know it's a pretty well-known project, but you'll be surprised, and I'm sure Rachel and people on the call have been involved in this, that have kind of engaged with people and they've all turned around and said, actually, we've never heard of This Girl Can, which is really interesting. We might think in our bubbles, This Girl Can, big project, but actually when we get out into the community and speaking to some of these people, it's really not as well known as you think. So yeah, so talk about the last 3 years and the history of This Girl Can, the learning we've gathered and how it's going to inform the next phase of the project as well. So it's quite a good time to do this talking space, I think, and hopefully in a year's time we'll be able to invite back to talk about how the update's been going. Yeah. So This Girl Can, for those that you don't know, it was started in 2015 and it was a national campaign launched by Sport England, and it was there kind of really just to tackle the inequality gap between men and women. We know there's a big inequality gap. I can't remember the exact figures in Nottingham and in England, but it's there. And we were one of the 8 core cities that were trusted with this project. And we still are one of the 8 core cities. I can't remember them all off the top of my head. Yeah. And as I say, it was kind of there to tackle the inactivity gap. But what was happening at the start? I mean, I wasn't involved in the start of the project, but Sian was, so she'll be able to kind of talk a little bit more in detail when we come to her. Was we were doing it in kind of your spaces and places that were kind of traditional, your sports halls, your pitches, and your things like that. They were traditional places, and we found that it was largely hitting probably less diverse community that faced less barriers. Things like finance weren't an issue to them. Previous experience, they probably played netball or something like that at school. And don't get me wrong, it made an impact. I still hear people that talk about it now. And there was one lady a year ago, I can't remember who it was, came to me, and it might have been a counsellor, I think, and she was like, I actually learned to swim from the This Girl Can campaign. And it was great. And obviously it was obviously an amazing thing. But we kind of wanted to do things a little bit differently. And this is what we've been up to, I think, over the last few years. So yeah, just going to talk to you a little bit about where we are now, I suppose. And before I do this, Adam's going to play you a few-minute video where you'll see Sian and some of the stuff we've been up to. There is a 20-minute version of this and a 20-page written report. I wouldn't put you through that today, but if you do want to see the report or the 20-minute video version of what Adam is about to show, please do get in touch, because it's a great video. It's a feel-good video that you can just have a coffee, have your lunch, and just play it. So yeah, Adam, can you play it, and then we'll come back to it. So thanks. This Girl Can, in the current iteration, we really wanted to take the activity to people in Nottingham and go to places that we hadn't been before, and reaching people that probably didn't know about This Girl Can or didn't even think about doing physical activity before.
We started off obviously with the street Zumba. Didn't know how it was going to be received, but actually the reception was really positive, and basically we got people's attention. I mean, who wouldn't, with a massive boombox dressed in neon lycra? And it's like the reaction from people like, oh my goodness, you know, this is classed as exercise. What is that all about? Because I'm having so much fun.
The women come from a really diverse background. So you've got mothers, you've got daughters, nieces, aunts, you know, they've got some childcare issues, and we've got engagement activities in the other room. So the children are under 12s are playing cricket over there, while the mothers and you know, their daughters and nieces are able to bond in the main hall and really develop their game.
It's transformed my life. It's given me the confidence to actually do something out of my comfort zone. It's something that I've wanted to do for a very, very long time, but I just didn't have any idea where to start with it. The support that I've had has been absolutely incredible.
I think because we're trying to put the idea out there that it's for the people, and I think the more local it is, the more people are actually going to want to come. You know, the women that come to my sessions, they literally live 2 minutes away, and I think it's easy for them to get to, which makes them want to come even more.
Partnership working for This Girl Can is so important. I think in the past it can be seen that there's been quite separate things happening, or there's been a project, it's a one-off. Actually working together and agreeing how to take things forward has been a lot more pivotal in the success of what we're doing. And to now be able to say we've got Zumba taking place in 3 different community centres, we've got yoga in a community centre, we've got cycling, we've got new activities happening, but they stem from conversations with people, or people being in the right place at the right time. That was a real bonus, actually. I think being able to do things a little bit differently.
It provides a vehicle for helping to galvanise local interest in the community. Yes, it's focused on fitness and well-being, but it also helps to tackle so many other issues. We see a reduction in antisocial behaviour. We see people that are taking a real sense of pride in looking after their home and garden.
The last time I played cricket was probably when I was at school. I came here just to have some fun. This is my me time where I'm getting fit, having fun, and you know, and learning as well.
Every time the Zumba's round, we come and like join in, have fun. We got inspired by the coaches and everything else, so we thought, okay, let's try and have a go at ourselves.
People have come out from the community and we've given them the tools. This is how we will support you, whether it's financial, whether it's mentoring. We've helped the community help themselves. Thanks, Adam. The slide's back on again now. Adam, I can only see you. I take it the slides are back up, yeah?
They're up, Loz, that's good.
Okay, perfect, thanks. I can only see Adam on my screen. Gives me a little bit of buzz, to be honest, every time I watch that. And the 18-minute video is just as good, if not better. You see all different experiences and everything like that. And it, as you can see in that, it really has taken a lot of organisations and partners and continue to do so. So thanks everyone for the effort that's been part of that. So yeah, so from 2019, I suppose we took a bit of a conscious effort to kind of change it, I think, with the direction we were going in. And along with Sport England and Active Knots, we were looking at a real place-based approach. So for those that you don't know, place-based approach, in a nutshell, it's kind of what that video talked about. It's a real bottom-up approach, understanding the needs of the community and working with them to design the work, rather than just kind of picking and placing stuff in the middle of nowhere and just hoping it would work. So back in February 2020, again, a few people present in this room were probably here when in that meeting actually we had. It was down at Trent Bridge, 2020, February, before the pandemic, when this little thing that over in the other side of the world was happening, and we were like, oh, I'll be fine, nothing will go on. And we had a bit of a collection about how we were going to work going forward. And then kind of obviously the pandemic hit and our service changed drastically. I mean, my role kind of changed and the staffing changed and everything like that. But fortunately, we did have a great set of people that we were working alongside. And one of them, Sean, who was in this call, and I'm going to bring her in now, actually, because you saw in the video. Appreciate you're not going to be able to see a video when she's talking, but she's an amazing person. Been great that I've been able to work with her alongside her, and that I'm going to continue to do so. So yeah, she kind of started it all off with Social Distance Street Zumba, actually. So I'll bring her in now, and she can talk a little bit about Social Distance Street Zumba and what that led to, I suppose. Sean, I'm over to you.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks for that, Loz. What a lovely intro. No pressure whatsoever over here. So apologies, my camera isn't working, and I'm actually okay about that because I've got a box of chocolates right next to me, so I've got no witnesses. So yes, as Loz said, my name is Sham, and a bit about me and my background really. I'm a Zumba instructor, but I also teach fitness all over Nottingham. I have the absolute privilege and honour. So can everybody hear me okay? Yes, I have the privilege and honour of teaching lots of different types of ladies all over the community, community groups, schools, faith groups, literally everybody. And it's taken me 11 years to build this rather meaty network. But a bit about my journey really. 11 years ago, after the birth of my second child, I was suffering with quite significant postnatal depression. I was on antidepressants and receiving some quite robust psychiatric help, and found myself housebound as well. I fell out of love with myself, and I just literally forgot who I was. So it took me 9 months to find the courage to go and try a Zumba class that everyone was telling me about. And when I first went, my confidence was in tatters. I crawled to the back of the room, God hoping that nobody would speak to me. And within 5 minutes of the music playing, it was like, wow. Oh my goodness, that rediscovery of who Sham was and what I liked and, you know, how I thought, how I felt. I looked all around the room. I could see lots of different women, different sizes, different shapes, ages, abilities. And it was like all of a sudden, oh my goodness, I'd found my place back in the community. So being inspired from that, I wanted to basically share that magic, and I tried to create almost like a mini secret fitness revolution around Nottingham. So I set up my own community classes and started teaching in the community about 11 years ago. I wanted to share this magic of how physical activity, or moving as I like to call it, can help people fall back in love with their bodies, helping to celebrate what I call lumps, bumps and trophies, you know, the evidence of giving, of having children, and forming a more positive relationship with our bodies. Yes, I lost loads and loads of weight, but the absolute magic for me and the biggest gain was that it helped to feed my positive mental health. I felt happy all of a sudden again, and it was through moving and physical activity. I could go on about the benefits and all those gorgeous things that you can gain, but I know we've got a lot to cover today. But yeah, essentially I just wanted to share that magic really, and just give women that license back to find more happiness within their bodies and inspire other women to get moving. This coincided very nicely with the first This Girl Can campaign, which landed in 2015. Started with that advert where the Missy Elliott track plays. I mean, boom, you've got me already, because that's my music. And all of a sudden, through that campaign, the national campaign and the advert, I could see something that I hadn't seen before. I could see women who looked exactly like me. I could see women of colour. I could see women with their lumps, their bumps, their trophies, but celebrating themselves and just falling in love with their bodies. And I wanted a piece of that. So I got in touch with the campaign. I got on board with the campaign, but how it looked in Nottingham was slightly different because, as Loz mentioned before, it wasn't really engaging with the diverse mix of the community, and it was almost as if it wasn't representing the many communities of Nottingham. The community that I was building with my Zumba classes featured women who had barriers and issues like affordability with exercise. The protocols of gyms, you know, we didn't understand it. We didn't fit into that traditional model of exercise. Mum guilt was huge as well. It's like, you know, how on earth can we as women just find that 1 hour a week where we get to step out of the chaos and step into our bodies? The relevance as well for women in my community, it was almost as if the relevance, it fit more with your traditional slim lady who had the disposable income, who already had the confidence to go to exercise classes. What was missing were the role models who represent people within their communities. So fast forward a couple of years later, in 2020 or 2019, as Loz mentioned, I absolutely jumped at the chance to take a role of This Girl Can Nottingham Community Motivator. Essentially, we were going into targeted communities, engaging and working with people to find out what they wanted to do and break down some of these barriers and how they wanted to move their bodies. Coincidentally, this happened at the same time as Rubbish Down. So we realised that we had to engage people in a different way. And that led to the creation of Socially Distant Street Zumba that Loz was talking about earlier. We targeted a couple of areas, some of the most deprived areas of Nottingham, and some of them that suffer with the biggest health inequalities. Essentially, Socially Distant Street Zumba was us taking to the streets in these areas, taking a partnership working approach. We had the police, community groups, housing, local councillors, also use the opportunity to hand out food provision to people in need. At the centre of that was me in bright neon lycra, megaphone, boombox, and some absolutely banging fat tunes. And we were literally inviting people to come out on their doorsteps, in their gardens, and basically move with us. What we saw was absolutely phenomenal. And even to this day, I feel so proud of being part of this work. We were engaging with a completely different type of woman that, in my opinion, we hadn't engaged with previously in the other This Girl Can Nottingham campaigns. The women that were coming out to dance with us, they were knackered, they were tired, they were depressed, they were inactive. In essence, they were the misfits of the physical activity world. They didn't have that gym protocol. They came out wearing the wrong bras. They didn't have trainers. They were in their 90s in their dressing gowns, but each and every single one of them came out to move their bodies. And at the same time, we were able to promote and bang on about the message about the gorgeous benefits of moving and physical activity, and engage with people on this level. If I could summarize and coin an expression of a lot of those ladies, it was that wow, absolute wow factor. Like, are you kidding me? This is exercise. Why on earth am I enjoying this so much? So we had their attention, and it's what do we do when we got their attention, and how do we keep that engagement? So we created lots of different sessions in those areas, Zumba, boxing, lots of different bits and bobs. And yeah, so it's a really, really exciting piece of work. I'm going to pause there because that was the first part of the project, and I'm going to hand back to Loz, but I'll come in a bit later and talk about what the work we are currently doing. So back over to you, Loz.
Thanks, Sharm. And yeah, I'll bring you back in later. And I always joke around with people and say, listen, Sharm's the fun one and I'm the sensible, boring one. And I think hopefully that'll have come out. And if you could see it, you could probably see that. And you probably saw that in the video, to be honest, when I'm there all stuffy and Sharm's there all excited and talking about it. So yeah, I think back to continue where I left off, I think is basically the pandemic. And I think that taught us something really, really important that we kind of knew anyway, is that we needed to look to work with so many different partners. I mean, looking at it, I think we had over 60 that were kind of, what do you call partners? We'd said some organisations come and go, but we had some real key stakeholders, some that you saw in the video, Renewal Trust, Active Knots, councillors, Nottingham City Homes, so many. And I really think you should reach out to these organisations that might not be your traditional ones, but I'll come back to that in a bit. And I think this kind of sustainability being the core to the work of what we did. And we had so many organisations, including larger ones, coming up to us and saying, will you fund this for 6 weeks or fund this for 8 weeks? And we were like, well, what's the point? I think people say the so what factor. 6 weeks, activity finishes, and that was it. We really wanted to make sure that we could work with these organisations to build sustainability into the heart of the project. So yeah, so I suppose that's the last 3 years. And what we learned from that, I think it's really important that we can kind of reflect on that and actually what did that show us? And then so talk about what that showed us and then how that reflects the next stage of the work going forward as well. Yeah. So first of all, I think this is so important, this idea of trust. I cannot get over how important this is. And I heard an expression in the Sport England webinar, actually, it's that change happens at the speed of trust. And anyone that's worked with me probably hears me say this over and over again. And to be honest, the fact that we got to work for 2 years or over 2 years on this project and we'll continue to work on it, it's a real game changer. And I appreciate that you're not all going to have projects that you're able to do this with. Your projects might be 6 weeks, 12 weeks, half a year or whatever. But actually, it's the way that you can maybe work with people on 3 or 4 projects over that time. Because it might be that you actually build the trust in one project, but then you know that you can knock on that door instantly. And we have that still. A lot of these organisations, we can knock on their door, whether it's with This Girl Can, whether it's some of the workforce stuff that we're doing, or whether it's completely different work, we can knock on their door and we'll instantly get an open door for us. So trust, and then the trust of the community as well. So a lot of these organisations have the trust of the community, so it's doing that. I think this second one's a real important one. Don't be afraid to test and learn. And I think I learned this more as the project went on, I think, to be fair, especially in the communities that we're working in. Some things we didn't get right. And I think I'm pretty honest with that. I mean, one of the things, for example, we did a road show in St Antony Stenton at the end of the first lockdown. And we had all these organisations, Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing, Renewal Trust, sporting organisations, all these different organisations that were joining. And we had about 6 or 7 road shows across the area. We didn't quite get the numbers that we were hoping for. I remember one of the sessions, and Rachel will remember it quite well, was absolutely chucking it down. And it was basically just used as childcare. We had about 20 or 30 kids come, and I think one mum came or something. And the idea was that we were going to have something for the children, something for the mums as an activity to keep the children busy so we can engage with the mums and find out about it. Actually, we had one at the Ice Centre that was actually really great, and we had really great numbers there. I was surprised about that, especially as well. It was a real diverse people there as well. But actually, what we did from that was we were able to identify some future ambassadors in the community. I think we got 3 or 4 from those road shows, and doesn't sound like much, but actually some of the stuff they're doing now is amazing. I mean, one of the ladies that you saw before was the cricket one. They've got 86 women that turned up to a cricket Muslim roadshow. We tried to do cricket as part of the roadshow. We got no Muslim women turn up. There's one woman from the community. She got 80 women turning up. So I think that kind of showed us a little bit of something as well. I think it's always, I've kind of said this before, break out your silos. I think it's so important to look who are other organisations that you perhaps not work with. How can you work with them a little bit differently? And how can we work with them differently? I think there's an expression that goes, if you always do what you've always done, then you'll always get what you've always got. And I think that's the same with us. We're meeting new organisations and partners all the time, and it feels like it's opening new doors as well. And the thing is, the best thing you can do is have a think about who you're working with. And this can be some basic mapping. I'm not talking you need to go through a big thing, but have a look at the organisations that you might be able to support with their priorities. Think about joining up with organisations that perhaps you've never joined up with before, and kind of go from there as well. And to be honest, funders like to see this as well. I communicate with funders quite a lot on a regular basis. And I think it's happening more and more. The organisations want to see not just one person in an organisation going on it, but maybe 3 or 4 of you joining together to do that. And that kind of leads me on to my next point around follow the energy. As you can see, the principles are working. That's part of the 20-page report. So if you want to see it, you'll see it in there. I think you've got to find an organisation or people that are willing to work with you. Sometimes there might be an organisation that you think you really want to work with, and you might have to demonstrate the value to them. What's in it for them as an organisation? Can you demonstrate that somehow, that it might be beneficial to their service users, their people that they're working with? Or if you struggle, try and find someone that might know them. For example, that trusted partner, I think, is really, really well. Or someone else within the organisation. But sometimes at the end of the day, you might just have to follow the energy and follow an organisation that is willing to work with you. I kind of touched upon it as before around the work reflecting the needs of the community. That's kind of everything that we do. We need to do things based on it, and that builds flexibility into it as well. You need to make sure that you're able to adapt things and build this into your project plan. You might do a 2 or 3 year project plan like we did back in 2019. We had this great project plan, had a budget, had some risk register, had all this stuff planned, taking me days and days to do it, and it all went out the window. And it taught us that flexibility needs to be part of this. And then Sian touched upon it, childcare. It's such a big thing. I get it with women. And I'm not here to give you all the answers, I'm afraid. My answer is, and I might be dodging it a little bit here, is there's no magic bullet for childcare. And I think, to be honest, my one thing that I would say is this is where partnership may come into it, such a big point. Looking at the cricket sessions that we had before, Samir touched upon it, we had about 5 or 6 different organisations working on that to make sure that that worked. And one organisation was childcare, one organisation was funding, one organisation was equipment, and it's still going because of kind of that partnership work and going into that. But there is so much, to be honest, I could sit here and probably have a 30-minute conversation around children and kind of keeping them going. So yeah, so that's learning for the next 3 years. And I suppose, how does that learning inform the next phase is where I want to get to next. So yeah, so first thing I want to say is co-curation. And it's a word that I've started using a lot more rather than consultation. I mean, just recently, I mean, we've heard this throughout, but recently even more so, we've heard from so many different organisations, and a lot of the time it's Sian kind of relaying this to me. So Sian's kind of a bit more on the ground, I suppose, than me. Is these diverse background organisations are hearing they're just there to tick a box, or they're there to do a questionnaire or for some photos. When they put the bids in, they're getting this money and they're using them and never seeing them again. And honestly, this is causing major issues in the community, and it's causing organisations to even turn away from us. And we're trying to go in there, and we need to do a lot of work to kind of say, break down that actually we're not here for this. We're not there for this. So one of the things that we're looking to do this time around, and I'll kind of go on to this a little bit more in a bit of detail, is how are we working with some of these organisations? So on the right, you can see there some of the organisations we're working with. I'll give you a quick example. So the Nottingham Muslim Women's Network, we're looking to get, and I'll come on to this a bit more later, we're looking to get a Muslim women's officer. If we kind of went through the city council and normal procedures, we might not get a Muslim woman from the community that would apply for it because the trust might not be there. They might be all working for the council, not sure, blah, blah, blah. So we're working with the Nottingham Muslim Women's Network to really build together this post, and how can we work alongside their priorities, and they have the trust of this organisation. And actually, it might open a few more doors for you. I mean, just from having this post kind of, hopefully in January, we're going to be going out for this post. We've had a few organisations, and even a conversation I had last week with a key stakeholder was, how can we actually expand on this post? So it might be a 3-4 day role. And I get that some people and organisations might be like, I'm worried about sharing money, because if you get a funding bid, there's maybe £5,000, and it's like, well, actually, this is a co-post, they're getting 2.5, but it will open doors. and it will open capacity within your organisation and trust within your organisation with other organisations as well. So yeah, so another thing as well, when you're working in an area or within the community, and this is something that I'll be speaking about later actually with one of the partners, it's about how does this work not stand alone. This Girl Can, it's really a word and a brand that we've used as a feel-good brand, as kind of engaging women in the area. And how do we make sure that it's not just This Girl Can coming to deliver and then disappearing? We had a lot of mistrust from people within the community that were saying, oh, this project's come and gone, this project's come and gone. Well, actually, how can you embed this project? Whether it might be, for example, working with public health, whether it might be working with organisations that are looking at poverty or education, how do you embed it in the community of work that's going on rather than just picking up and placing on it? And this workforce is such a big learning curve for us, and that's going to play such a big role in the work going forward. And on the next slide, I'll bring Sharm in to talk a little bit more about that, because that's where her role's slightly been moulded, I think is probably fair to say, going forward. And then most of us here work in physical activity in the core. I mean, I've not seen everyone, but I assume that that's kind of what we're doing, whether it's moving more or whatever. I think it's to understand actually physical activity plays such one piece of the puzzle, I think is fair to say. And how do you engage with people that perhaps don't even consider physical activity? They might be thinking, how am I going to pay the bills this winter? What about my housing, my social housing? Can you work with organisations that are looking at this and are building this as part of their organisation, that you can join up with them to actually say, well, actually, maybe you can work with them on smoking cessation, maybe you can work with them on nutrition, maybe you can work with them on education organisations and such like. Just consider physical activity is just a small part. We might like to think it's everything, but I'm afraid it's not, especially when people aren't even considering whether they're going to do exercise. So yeah. So I suppose, what does this look like in principle for us over the next minimum 2 years, I'd like to say, from Sport England? And again, massively thankful that they've put their commitment into us and their trust into us, that it's going to be at least 2 years. And it's great that some more of this work is going to be happening. And I appreciate that some of you might have pots that you have to chase that are 12 weeks, 20 weeks and stuff like that. So I appreciate that might not be part of that. So yeah, I think working together is a massively important thing, and this kind of reflects some of the vision of Active Knots. And a little bit of a plug here for Active Knots. But if you haven't seen their Making Our Move, have a look at it. And a lot of the values that they do is stuff that we're kind of working with, because working together is key and it is vital, and especially in this local community. Sometimes, I mean, I'm from up north. I mean, I've been in Nottingham 4 years. I don't know these local communities as well as these organisations and these people do. And trust me, it's not a one size fits all. Just because something works in Clifton, it's not going to work in Bulwell. But there is kind of things that you can put in place. As I touched upon before, sustainability is a thing, and that's going to continue to be a thing. I remember when Sport England, we have kind of conversations with them, and we spoke a little bit about kind of evaluation, and he asked me, has the project been successful? And I said, I can't judge it based on now. Ask me again in 5 years. Are some of the women that were doing physical activity, the part of the project, still doing physical activity? Are some of the women that we know that have got employment during the project of this, are they still employed? Are some of the sessions that we've set up still going? The here and now isn't just everything. We need to be thinking about 5 years' time and the changes that you can do. And I've touched upon the new roles. I'm really excited by these new roles, to be honest. And I think they're really embedded within the community. And that we had lots of great individuals and volunteers last time that were driving some of this stuff, as you saw on the video. But let's see if we can employ these people within the community. I'm really excited by the Muslim Women's Officer. I mean, we've got a few people that we think might be interested in the role. And over 2 years, can we have someone that's kind of like ingrained within the community that can kind of do the work, and they've got the trust and they're able to dig that a little bit deeper? Obviously, I've spoken about Sharm, and Sharm's going to be kind of doing a bit more around workforce going forward. So I'm going to bring her back in now, actually, to say what she's been up to in terms of workforce, and actually the last few months and what that's doing. So yeah, Sharm, I'm going to bring you back in if you've not fallen asleep from me talking.
Hi, sorry, I was busy putting the heating on here. I'm not in I'm not at home, I'm not in my own office, so I'm just utilising the resources around me, feeling very warm. Yeah, thanks for that, Loz. So just a little bit about my role, which is called the Workforce Development Officer. Again, jumped at the chance to take on this 2-year contract. Hopefully it can be work that continues. We're still targeting certain communities, but we've also got a bit of a citywide approach attached to it as well. What we found last time in 2020 was it was all very well creating and engaging the community and creating opportunities for people to move, but we had to outsource instructors and people to deliver from outside of the areas. And what we found, like Loz was saying, was there was no workforce within these communities. So my role, and just like Loz, I'm really, really excited about this, is to support people to upskill within their own communities, thus representing those communities to be able to deliver in their own areas through the support of This Girl Can. So really, really lovely example about this. I'm smiling, you can't see me, but I am proper smiling as I'm talking about this example. A lovely lady called Sam, during lockdown, she was delivering her own little baby called Street Disco. She was getting the kids out on the street, putting some music on, giving the mums half an hour to put their feet up, have a cup of tea and whatever. And this was working really, really well in Bulwell, one of our targeted areas. Through Socially Distant Street Zumba, we connected with Sam. She was inspired through the Street Zumba, and just creating a real meaningful relationship with her. She shared with us that she wanted to train as a Zumba instructor, having been inspired by the work that we were doing. So through the support and funding of This Girl Can, and a bit of mentoring from myself and the journey that I've been on, Sam has upskilled, and she's now teaching Zumba at the heart of her community, the place where she lives, the people that she knows, and she's getting people locally coming to her class, which, you know, just makes complete sense to us. I have to share that although this role is fairly new, the biggest key is that you have to spend time, you've got to put the work in and build meaningful relationships with communities, literally break bread with them, meet people at their level and just take them as they are. And in my role, I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel and create new communities. What I'm actually doing is I'm engaging with existing communities. So I'm literally hijacking their forums, I'm going to their meetings, I'm eating their cake and enjoying their heat in their offices and the community centres where they're meeting. I'm meeting them at their place, and I'm putting the work in to spend time and build a relationship and build trust with them. Another lovely example of this is an organisation in Nottingham called Hayar. Now, Hayar is a group of Arabic women. They come from all over Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran, Turkey, Egypt. They've experienced lots of adversity since moving to this country, racism, stereotype. They have a lack of resources, but they love their Zumba. However, all of these barriers that I was mentioning get in the way. So I've connected with this community group, spent hours with them, talked about the weather, talked about their kids, I've ate food with them, the whole shebang. And basically we've tried Zumba, and we've worked out that that model isn't going to fit for them. So what we've done is, well, what they've done, should I say, they've created a model where they get to come and meet up for an hour a week, put some tunes on, get YouTube on even, and they get to dance and enjoy all of those benefits of moving and physical activity. And part of the beauty of the work I've been doing with them is we've been able to identify all of the things that, all of the benefits, you know, like the confidence building and feeding positive mental health and just enjoying their bodies and gaining confidence. A couple of other projects. We've got a lady who at the start of lockdown, she had a baby and found herself very isolated. Childcare was an issue. She stopped moving, put lots of weight on and affected her mental health negatively. So she set up her own little baby called PramFit, where she was getting other mums who were experiencing similar or the same things as her, and literally just meeting up once a week, going for a walk, having a coffee, meeting back at the meeting place, and then off they go. So she would like to work with other people around Nottingham and basically upsource this model. So through the support of This Girl Can and through my support, hopefully we're going to support her to upskill other women and land PramFit all over the city, so we can have lots of mums walking around combating this isolation also while moving. A little bit more, so basically my role is to support and create a model that meets the needs of particular communities, which is really, really important. It's a different way of working, a new way of thinking, that we're getting rid of that gym protocol, we're getting rid of, you know, the conventional looking community class or exercises. We're meeting communities at their level and trying to create something that is going to work for them. So hopefully you can hear the excitement in my voice if you can't see it in my face. It is ambitious, it's innovative, it's unknown because we've never done it like this way before. But hopefully you'll agree it's essential, it's exciting, and it's sustainable, because it's not, like Loz was saying, just giving people 6 weeks worth of funded activity. It's actually embedding activity within their communities for communities to take ownership of themselves. So hopefully this is going to feed into this mini fitness revolution. It can only grow, and grow our This Girl Can Nottingham army to hopefully empower more women to keep moving. So Loz, back over to you to finish off the bits and bobs.
Thanks, Sharm. And to be honest, in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is clone 100 Sharms around the city. I think if we could do that, I think we'd be job well done, and we'd put ourselves out of work, to be honest. I think This Girl Can wouldn't need to be in Nottingham, but yeah. So yeah, so essentially what we're going to do as well is for those of you that came last year, I don't know if you remember the ones in the room, we're at the New Art Exchange, and we did kind of a bit of an end of project wrap up. It was kind of as cases were growing in COVID, and we still have 50 people in the room, but I think we were expecting a little bit more. And it was kind of what we were doing was to share learning, networking, and to be honest, I think what we've decided to do is do this a bit more often. So even though the project might be another 2 years at least, we're probably going to look to do one of these in about 9 months, maybe October, September next year. Again, it'll be kind of a networking, share learning. And I'm cautious, I don't want to invite everyone into the room, or else we might have to hire out the arena or something, because the numbers keep growing, to be honest. But we are hoping to have a talking space in another year to kind of tell you where we're at. But if there is anyone Nottingham City based, I suppose, that wants to get involved either in the project or kind of coming down to that networking in 9 months, then do feel free to get in touch. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. I'm wrapped up now. Rachel, I was given 40 minutes. I think that's pretty much perfect because we started.
Yeah, bang on. Great timing.
Yeah.
I think it's just a chance now. Thank you both for sharing all of that. Some really, really interesting bits. I know I've got a few questions I would ask, but yeah, and always have questions. Yeah, just chance for people to either put your hand up if you've got something that you've reflected on which you thought was quite interesting, that you wanted to share about your own work. Maybe it's something about childcare. Like Loz said, it comes up time and time again. There isn't an easy answer to it. What have you guys done? Have you seen good practice on how to address childcare? Or whether you want to find out about something else. So I would just open the floor to anybody that's got any questions. Either pop them in the chat or put your hand up. Just give people a chance. Tim, go for it. You're on mute, Tim.
Sorry, I just wondered if you could tell us when all the other officers are going to be in place. I don't know if somebody mentioned that and I missed it, but I got the impression that Charmaine's workforce officer, and then there are 2 others.
Yeah, so Sharm is kind of continuing with her work, so she's kind of doing a little bit more background stuff. I think it's probably fair to say just remaking those connections and making new connections. So she is doing a little bit of that, but she's not at full capacity. The other two positions, hoping to come in January, just need to stand on the dotted line, I think is probably fair to say, that the jobs will go out in January. So yeah, if you're thinking of going for one, Tim, more than welcome to go for it. But I know what you're thinking. I know we've got to catch up in January anyway, so hopefully I'll know a bit more in place for then. Yeah. And I know we've spoken a little bit about how the roles might be able to work with that. But I know you know Sharm, and you've been in touch with Sharm. Yeah. As soon as the other roles are in place, I think we'll. Oh, sorry, the place-based approach, that's probably one thing I didn't say. I think I've mentioned this to you, Tim, before. That's going to be the west of the city, so kind of around Strelley, Aspley, Bilborough, that sort of way. Maybe I didn't go into that in too much detail because I appreciate not everyone's here from Nottingham City, so that's probably like, where's that?
Yeah, cool.
But it's been a bit more relevant to you, Tim.
Yeah, great.
Thanks, Tim. Whilst others are maybe thinking of questions, one thing I wondered, Sharm, was whether you could just go into a little bit more detail about when you were talking about working with Sam, and I know you've worked with lots of others, but Sam in particular around, she talked about on the video how she got amazing support, and you talked about how you did some mentoring with her. Just a little bit more about what that looked like would be great.
Yeah, of course. So based on my own personal experience, really, it's that instructor journey that until you embark on that journey, you've got no idea basically about the challenges, the celebratory part. And so it was really just sharing my experience, but making it relevant to Sam. So it's all the kind of the softer things like working out who you are as an instructor, working out your vision, your values, your morals, what messages is it you want to send out there, what is it you want to do. But then there's also what I call the instructor toolkit. So I was supporting Sam with things like where to go for insurance, does she need a DBS certificate, safeguarding, first aid, all of that, and then where to go if that was relevant as well. So basically it's all the stuff that I could have done with 11 years ago. And I think it was really beneficial for Sam, so that when she did start her classes in Bulwell, she was able to come back to me and just have somebody to sound off and just share that experience with behind closed doors.
Rachel, there is a full case study on Sam. I'm not sure if you knew this at the time, but there's probably about a 10 or 15 minute video that we just literally captured Sam's story. Just because it was one of the first people that we did, and it kind of shows the full journey, I think is safe to say. So if anyone wants the evaluation report video or Sam's story, then feel free to get in touch.
Yeah, get in touch, that'd be great. Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's really interesting in terms of that toolkit. It just made me think of, I wondered whether either of you could share the example that Karen spoke to us about the other week around how Evolve as an organisation are actually helping to remove some of those, like you said, Sharm, there's almost like a toolkit of things that you need to have in place as a leader and instructor if you're putting yourself in that position in order to get your activity going or your session, or to sort of set it up. And Evolve spoke about how they've kind of done that slightly differently, which I found was a really interesting example. I don't know whether either of you could explain it a bit more. Hopefully you know what I mean.
Sharm, is Karen with you? Maybe she can know you down at Evolve.
No, unfortunately she isn't. No, I think, Rachel, what you're describing there is it the boxing session where you've I think so. They've set up a couple of boxing sessions for women. You've got your trained and qualified, if you like, boxing instructors and coaches, but who are men. But what they were finding was it was actually some of the women in the sessions who were stepping forward and becoming their own natural leaders. So the rest of the group were actually relating more to these women than the men who were leading the session. So what's actually happened, very naturally, it's evolved into a session that's actually now led by these women, but with the support and guidance of the male qualified coaches. So similar to what I was talking about before, it's a model that's been created very organically, but just really looking at that community and seeing exactly what they need and what's going to work with them, and then just going with that, really. Is that what you meant, Rachel?
Yeah,
I think she meant,
go on.
did you mean, so there's sort of one of them that leads it, and now there's a few of them that are kind of there to pick it up
Yeah.
if she leaves? Because I think what they figured out was actually, when I can't remember the lady's name, I met her a few weeks ago, was actually when she leaves, I think the ladies were like, well, what do we do then? And then they kind of supported them. Actually, what you do, try and get them to figure it out themselves, actually. So what do we do if rather than kind of telling people this is what you need to do or go on a course? And it was something that actually I went on, it was through Active Knots recently, around that community engagement, around getting people to think about these things for themselves. It might come naturally to us. Well, actually, you need someone that can step in to do this. Actually, just say to them, well, what happens if she's not around? And it's like, well, actually, the session doesn't take place. Well, actually,
Yeah.
do we want that? Do we want something else? Do we?
Yeah, it was that kind of shared responsibility, wasn't it? And not it being quite scary for someone to be like the named instructor for that session for the whole time, more seeing it as a bit of a shared, succession planning, I think they spoke about as well, which is interesting. Is there anything you would, what do you think, Loz, Sham, to the question Edwina's put in the chat about childcare and have we found that certain times of the day have worked better or others, or are there other, I guess, other examples of how you have addressed childcare through this work?
Yeah, what is one of the a lovely example actually that I'd like to share is a group of ladies who you saw on the video who engaged with us through Street Zumba and some of the continuation work we did in This Girl Can. And again, just building relationship and trust with them. They vocalise that they just want to go out and play football. They don't want a committee. They don't want this, that, and the other. They just want to get out, play football, but actually it's something that they'd like to do with their kids as well. So what they've done is they've created sessions every Saturday that's a family session. So not only is it getting the women moving, it's getting the kids out, but it's spending time with the children as well, that's away from devices and tablets and phones. So that's one particular model that is still going actually after, I think it's about 18 months they've been doing that. Sad to say that there aren't any obvious solutions for the childcare solution, apart from the only other example is stuff that happens during the day, obviously when kids are at school as well. I don't know, Loz, if you've got any other examples or solutions that you've...
Yeah, I mean, the one at St Anne's was one. So the cricket one. Something else that I know that we've looked to amend slightly is we've got a yoga session running at the same time as a kicks session. I don't know if you're familiar with that, like Premier League football kicks. One of the things that we did try and perhaps wasn't one of our successes, but I still think I want to kind of knock that door down, is working with Toy Library, who, those of you who don't know, funded by Small Steps, Big Changes, the north of the city. They do something called Family Mentors, which is around like supporting the family. And we tried to upskill one of the family members, the family mentors, to actually deliver physical activity for the mums and the children at the same time. I think if you even consider childcare for these people, it just takes, it's not even a starter. You either need to consider, actually, can we do it with something mums and children working alongside each other, which throws up a lot of issues and insurance, and you've got to kind of explore that. Can we look to add something where there's an organisation already doing individuals? I mean, Sean, we went down to Belong a couple of weeks ago on a cold Friday evening down at Forest Recreation Ground, where they've got the kids taking part in physical activities, and Belong mainly deal with refugee children. And Sean went in this room full of these women and just spoke to the women who were there. Normally just sit around eating food, no problem with that. Friday evening we all sit around and eat food, and actually how do we get them to think about doing physical activity while the kids are busy? Personally, if I was going down a simple route, one size fits all, I would suggest that route, because you've almost got the childcare and everything present. It's when you start bringing in the younger ones, the toddlers, that becomes an issue. I know of organisations and people that have done this, now, again, insurance and everything like that, where they might have, for example, Sean spoke about the lady who did PramFit. So they did PramFit and taking the kids on the pram. I know about people that have done things like actual taking part in Zumba, and the kids will be to one side, I suppose, which causes a lot of issues. We spoke about one thing that we would do where it might be like the mums would rotate looking after the kids in the corner. a lot of organisations kind of shot us down on that one. Actually, not that many organisations, but a couple of people were like, "Have you ever had kids? You don't know what's going on," sort of thing. So I think it's safe to say we haven't got it. We have 2 or 3 or 4 examples where it is working, but we're probably 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 where it didn't work. And I think, to be honest, that's the nature of some of this work. It isn't easy, and you do get a lot of things wrong, but when you do get something right, it is great.
Was the the cricket session you mentioned, what was it that they had done? Was it they had a separate space for the young people to be doing their own activity?
Yeah, so it's in a sports hall, and one thing that we kind of pretty much set from the outset was that we weren't really going to fund children's activity apart from the roadshow, because it would have just swallowed our budget straight away. So that was one of the things that we kind of set from the outset, that we weren't going to fund children's activity. So in the cricket, you've got sports all over here, and you've got a studio here. So the mums were taking part in the physical activity, and the kids were doing something with an organisation. I can't remember the organisation. Nice guy that was kind of leading on it. But essentially, we helped fund the women's activity. Nottinghamshire County Cricket Club helped with the equipment and fund some of that. Renewal Trust, I think, supported with some of the facility hire because they were an organisation we worked with. And Carrington and Cavaliers were the cricket club that eventually we kind of sat them with. They helped fund the children and young people stuff. And then in the summer, that kind of turned into the children and young people looked after doing all-stars and all this sort of, and it became like subs and things like this, but I'm not going to go into the cricket in too much detail.
Thanks, Liz. We've got if we take this as the final question, then we'll pop the poll up. I think Adam will put it in. That was just coming around leisure facilities, and Jules, feel free to come off mic and ask that question. But Loz, any thoughts on that question around the fact that we know that energy prices are putting a pressure on facilities, I guess, in general, leisure facilities, and is there any work or guest support around encouraging participation within leisure facilities?
If Claudia's on this call with me, I'm sure she'll be laughing. I don't know if she is, but at the same time, because we talk about this. Even this morning, we had one leisure centre that just put up their prices to a rate that I think is too much for community-based stuff. Just read the question again because it's tough. Because I do work for the city council, and part of the role is kind of leisure centre based. So any work to support and encourage participation in leisure centres. Do you know what? The thing that I would really like to say, and I know it's tough for leisure centres to do this, is the flex, and the thing that I would like to see more from leisure centres, but again, I probably can't go into too much detail, is the flexibility on pricing at certain times. I think is absolutely key. I mean, I know facility high space that's just not being used. And I used to work at Nottingham Trent Uni and was started in the facilities there, and it's exactly the same thing. They'll charge full whack, £40–50 an hour, and from 5 o'clock onwards, I understand that. I really do understand that, because they've got budgets to make. City council are making cuts left, right, and centre. They've got budgets to make. But before 5 o'clock, I'd really like to see some sort of concessionary rate, or working with partners or organisations. I know that Claudia had a really good deal with Mellish a few years ago, which was around, you know what, we'll have the individuals paying £1 or a couple of pounds when they turn up. And not every week did they get the £40, I think they were charging. But some weeks they got 50, some weeks they got 20, some weeks they got 15 or whatever like that. So I think, how do we get the leisure centres doing that? I think, again, working at the City Council and as part of Active Nottingham and leisure centres, I can't really comment too much on it, but that's something that I would really like to see, is that flexibility and understanding that. I think when I did the reporting years and years ago, something like 50% of leisure centre spacing doesn't get used. Well, actually, if you get 20–30 hours where it's £20 an hour, that's better than 50 times 0. Do you know what I mean? 20 times 20 is better than 50 times 0. But that's a broader conversation. It's not really my remit, I'm afraid. I do try and knock on the door because I think it's absolutely vital. But I understand why leisure centres charge £50 an hour if they can.
Thanks, Laz.
Did that answer the question? Sorry, I kind of tried to keep the question in my mind as I was doing it, but I'm not sure I did answer that question directly.
That's fine, Lawrence. Thank you. That's really useful feedback. I'll take that back.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jules. There's a few things coming in the chat, so we might just need to have a scan over those. Laz, there's a few other questions. I'm just conscious of time, so I wondered, Adam, is it now the time to put the poll up? before we let people go, if we're sticking to 1:30.
That's
Is that
fine. Just in
alright?
Jenny's chat, I speak to Jenny all the time, so I can pick it up with Jenny.
Thanks, Adam. If you could put your response in to the poll, that'd be really helpful. And thank you for coming, and thanks in particular for Loz and Sham and the time and effort in getting ready for today and sharing this with us. It's been a really useful session. And there's a few other questions coming in, so feel free to pop answers in the chat as we finish, or if you've got the time, Loz, I don't know whether you're shooting off to another meeting.
No, I can stay. I mean, I'm got to be Evolve in Aspley in about half an hour, but it's about 20 minutes away, so I've got 10 minutes if you want to do it.
There was feel free, people, if you need to shoot off to another meeting, that's absolutely fine. There was the question about the Pram Fitness, and did you need to recruit new volunteers as the existing volunteers child gets older? I think that's what Debbie meant.
Oh, I didn't see that one. Charm, are you here still?
Yeah, I saw that one, and the answer to that is yes. And the lady that I'm working with who created PramFit, she's aware of that. She's hoping that the volunteers that she recruits around the city to deliver PramFit, they will be responsible for that continuous recruitment of new people to come along as the children get older. Yes, but the original lady herself, because she's created it, although her child is now grown and is at nursery or school, she wants to stay to create and grow that model herself. So yes, the answer to that is yes.
Sham, do we have any? Have I missed any other questions before we finish up?
I know Karen kind of mentioned one around leisure centres, and it isn't always going to be the best place for them to be. There's so many different barriers. We took some of the ladies from Hayar into Victoria Leisure Centre. If he knows Victoria Leisure Centre, it is a really nice community centre, but it's not the biggest, but it is quite nice and clean. And honestly, the face that they made when they saw this leisure centre, they were like, wow, these things exist. And I was like, this is just Victoria Leisure Centre. I've been in hundreds of these that are 10 times the size of this. It was just a basic swimming pool, basic gym. I say basic, it's nice. But they were like, whoa, I was a little bit like, wow, these things don't exist. So to take Karen's answer, there might be so many different barriers that people won't go in leisure centres. Obviously cost and budget is one. But yeah, sometimes the leisure centre is the best place and space and place for it. Sometimes it's not, so it's just being mindful of what is the best place. I mean, you saw on the video, some of the places that we were using were community centres that were an hour later was a luncheon group, or during COVID, it was a piece of grass that was in the middle of an estate.
All different spaces.
Yeah.
Thanks, lots. Bro, okay. I think that's probably the end of the questions then. So yeah, thanks very much. We'll draw the session to a close. Thanks everyone.
Hope to see you on the. Invited back in another year.
Yeah, you will. You've made it.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.